What's up, guys? Loads of football talk here. We enter week 2 of my annual Divisional Draft and Roster Review series, where every week we look at an NFC and AFC division each, the Eastern ones here, where over the course of a month we'll be highlighting the draft classes and overall off-seasons of all 32 NFL franchises, discussing how they've gone along here, free agency, potential trades, and the draft as a lens to all of this. As always, we'll give quick snap evaluations of every player, discuss them within the construction of those rosters, how they fit within the rest of the picture, and what I think about each class overall, plus what it tells us about each franchise. To finish these videos, rather than handing out draft grades, I will rank how much of a fan I was of what they did in the draft in particular, in relation to all the other moves they made. Yet again, while I got eyes on like 400 prospects in this draft cycle, and I've done full evals on the majority of them, inevitably there'll be players selected that I didn't get to, and with a couple even heard of, particularly in a year where there seemed to be a lot of variance between NFL teams. So rather than trying to act as if I watched them, I'll just throw out some measurables and maybe noteworthy stats on those 3 or 4 names before we go on. Just real quick before we dive in, please do me a favor and hit the like button. If you enjoy this type of content, feel free to hit the bell and follow along all off-season. I have a video article coming out pretty much every week without any fluff. The link to my site, Footballtalk.com, for all my content and timestamps for the 4 teams discussed today are down below in the description. Let's get into the NFC East now, first with the Dallas Cowboys, who started off with a pair of first-rounders, 11th overall Caleb Downs, safety Ohio State, and 23rd overall Malachi Lawrence, edge defender from UCF, 3rd round 92nd overall Jason Barham, linebacker/edge from Michigan, 3 4th-rounders, pick 112 Drew Shelton, offensive tackle Penn State, 114 Devin Moore, cornerback Florida, and 137 LT Overton, edge from Alabama, and then the 7th round, pick 218, Anthony Smith, the wide receiver from East Carolina. Downs, they did wait pretty patiently for, considering how much smoke there was around Jerry Jones getting twitchy, potentially wanting to trade up as far as number 3 overall, but only swapped back-to-back spots with Miami, in exchange for a pair of late 5th rounders, wanting to make sure to secure what I considered the number 1 overall prospect in the entire draft. Downs immediately looked like a superstar in Nick Saban's defense at Alabama, and when the legendary head coach retired the following offseason, he transferred to Ohio State, where he was a back-to-back team captain and unanimous All-American, capable of lining up anywhere in the secondary and being the tone setter for the unit. Steps down with purpose against the run, sorts through the trash extremely well, and hits like a brick shithouse. His studying habits, ability to process information, and transfer it to his feet are as good as you're gonna see from any safety in college. Tracks all eligibles and the ball extremely well, and he makes people hear footsteps when he drops down with the want to decapitate receivers over the middle of the field. The negatives are very limited, where his arms measure barely over 30 inches, which can hurt him in those close combats with bigger bodies inside the box. And maybe he's just a great rather than an elite athlete. There were a handful of opportunities though, where he could have attacked the ball rather than the man for possible interceptions, but that's about it. New Cowboys defensive coordinator Christian Parker was proud of seeing how Nickel Cooper-DeJean could change the feel of that Eagles unit, and that's where Downs should primarily line up on base downs, where Parker said he'll be in the box, blitz, fill the B and C gap, and more, and then define dropback settings is why they might move him around more, have him patrol the middle of the field as a robber and stuff. Those 2 football nerds working closely together, I just want to sit down and listen in on them talk through game plans this fall. And then Malachi Lawrence from UCF, the first of 2 first-rounders, along with next year's, that they got back from Green Bay in the Micah Parsons trade, and they actually moved back 3 spots in an in-division trade with the Eagles, which returned them a pair of 4th-rounders while sending a 7 back to Philly. Lawrence is someone who I believe the hype train just got a little off control on, even though there is a lot to like, of course. Has a violent style of play from the moment he gets off the ball, is willing to launch his body into pulling linemen in order to create traffic in the backfield. As a pass rusher, he combines first-time explosion and ankle flexibility to win around the edge, while maximizing those levers in the long arm and how he digs through the chest of blockers with relentless effort in getting after the quarterback. Yet, just build-wise, that high-cut frame doesn't always do Lawrence favors in terms of winning leverage, and he has a ways to go in terms of deconstructing blocks. Too often pass protectors are able to get under his chest and throw him off significantly, lacking fluidity to a certain degree in his moves. And he just missed way too many tackles in space due to some stiffness there. So this was definitely early for me, but not surprising at all considering the steam he had built up throughout the process. Dallas traded a 4th rounder to Green Bay for former 1st-round pick Rashawn Gary early in the calendar. Donovan Izurako really flashed as a rookie pass rusher for them last season as a 2nd-round pick. and they hope Sam Williams can tap back into what he showed for his first 2 years after tearing both his ACL and MCL in 2024, which is why they extended him for another season. This could be a much more potent outside rush to go with Quinnen Williams as the crown jewel in the interior. Speaking of players who would help out on the edge, Jayshon Barham from Michigan, which didn't own a second rounder due to the Quinnen trade with the Jets, and the original third rounder had been sent to Pittsburgh for George Pickens, but then they did ultimately select here at the end of day 2, thanks to what they got back in return for D-tackle Osa Odighizuwa from the 49ers. Barham trusts his eyes and attacks downhill as an enforcer in the run game for the Wolverines, who just wants to create car crash collisions as a hybrid on/off-ball defender, makes opponents earn catches over the middle of the field, with the thump on contact as they put their hands on the ball, and his burst and ankle flexion to turn the corner made him look right at home on the edge, but then he can also blow up running backs sliding in front of him as an off-ball blitzer. When playing on the edge, Barham is rather undisciplined with taking care of his containing responsibility at this point, and missed some opportunities to disengage from blocks, while in passing situations, he's too often a step late against what's happening behind him in coverage, and still needing to add some finesse to his rush arsenal, but a really fun player that he can put in multiple spots along the front 7, as we discuss the options Dallas has on the edges, but considering they also traded a 5th round pick on day 3 for the Winters from San Francisco, I'm not sure yet where they actually want to play Barham. However, I view him as the long-term option as a thumper, next to the Marvin Overshone, who they can mug up on passing downs. Maybe he's kind of the sack bomb for Parker from his time in Philly, and becomes a real asset who makes that front feel that much more dynamic. Drew Shelton, the Penn State tackle, is a former 4-star recruit who was a mainstay at left tackle since Olu Fashanu became a top 15 pick. Athletic player with a basketball background, whose mobility was clearly an asset for a wide zone-based rushing attack, has become much more aggressive with racing the distance to first-level defenders and creating displacement, especially on down blocks. Although I'd still say he turns or shields defenders more than he drives them off the ball at the point of attack. Operates with a flat back and rarely lunges to initiate contact in pass pro, with well-timed punches and quality lateral movements, but his strikes lack some authority to stun the guy across from him, and he'll give ground against speed to power conversion. They really need to add a swing tackle with Nate Thomas and Johnny Cornelius as the only other 2 options currently on the roster. I believe Shelton immediately beats them out and has starting potential if they decide to not extend Terrence Steele and potentially find a trade partner for him next offseason when his $15 million cap hit strikes. Devin Moore from Florida is a long boundary corner at 6'3", 200 pounds with some fire to him and can reroute receivers significantly. Active communicator in zone coverage, who calls out pre-snap adjustments and looks to fall on the leaf routes as a hand corner, fights off and disengages from blocks on the perimeter, while rarely surrender and contain and can sling ball carriers to the ground with those long arms, missing just over 8% of attempted tackles in his career. He's tall and pretty choppy with his steps paddling back and off coverage, and I'm not sure he can hang with legit speedsters if he isn't allowed to put his hands on them early, while only having logged 17 career starts and missed time of injury in 3 or 4 seasons with the Gators. So understandable why he's not everyone's cup of tea necessarily, but I thought he had a solid chance of going late day 2 because of the potential he presents, similar to some other guys who went in that range. Now with the addition of Kobe Durant for a year at $4 million, to go along with another athletic outside corner in Savon Revel, who came with an injury discount in the last year's draft, I'm wondering if we see those 3 on the field together, with Jerome Bland only on longer downs, if Caleb Downs is the primary apex defender at the nickel. And is there a path where Moore steps in, and those 2 veterans see the contracts run out, and this defense evolves again in 2027, because they have those 2 young press corners on the perimeter? LT Overton from Alabama is a jumbo-sized strong side D end, who consistently is able to create knockback, fit his hands inside the frame of blockers, wants to absolutely destroy pulling guards behind the line of scrimmage, and often spills the ball out wide to his teammates, with that chaos-creating quality, and those heavy hands also show up when he twists the upper body of offensive linemen as he hits his club or pushes at the shoulder, with an impressive ability to contort his frame as he falls through. Trying to corral scrambling quarterbacks or runners out on the edge, you do see Overton's higher weight show up in his limited change of direction skills, and he still has plenty of room to stack pass rush moves on top of one another and work a plan for our matchups, where too often he just gets stuck. The Cowboys traded Solomon Thomas to Tennessee for a 7th rounder prior to the draft, so this makes a lot of sense as a replacement. With all those lighter bodies on the edge otherwise, giving them a breather on early downs, maybe Overton can be unlocked a little bit more on the inside on certain sub-packages. Dallas did originally own pick 152 next, but sent it to San Francisco as already mentioned, for linebacker D. Winters, who probably was better than anyone they could have acquired here, even if they're paying more for him on the final year of his rookie deal than the Niners did through his first 3 combined. But lastly, it's going to be Anthony Smith, the East Carolina wide receiver, who I didn't specifically study outside of watching him during Shrine Bowl practices, where he got way too excessive with his wide steps and shoulder fakes as a route runner, but showed excellent concentration on a pair of tough catches before he nicely settled down in soft spots against zone coverage during team drills and sharply pierced up the field after the catch, even if I didn't see the 4-4 from his pro day quite sharp there. Dallas restructured the contracts of quarterback Dak Prescott, wide receiver CeeDee Lamb, and guard Tyler Smith this offseason. They franchise tagged George Pickens. Are they doing the whole spiel again, where they drag a contract extension along all offseason? Do they just play out this year? Is he available via trade? We'll see about all of that, but for all the stuff we can say about Jerry Jones, wanting to be the star of the show, and some of the ways they ultimately hurt themselves by allowing negotiations with the stars to play out publicly, Will McClay and company sure know how to draft. I believe they got the best player in the draft at pick 11, even if they might have gotten just a little bit antsy by moving up a spot at the very end. I already explained how I thought the hype train had gotten out of control on Melchior Lawrence, but it definitely seemed as if other teams late in the first were in on him as well, and I don't mind them trading down with the biggest rival in the division. Some other interesting players with alignment versatility defensively in the middle rounds, trading a fifth to D. Winters, who will probably start for you at linebacker this year. All in all, I really liked what they did here, even though as you'll see here, the entire NFC East did pretty damn well. Now let's hope they can keep the picking situation quiet for once, focus on what's happening on the field, and Christian Parker can turn around this defense that suddenly has a lot more quality pieces to it. Next up we have the New York Giants, who also own a pair of first-round picks, and in particular the only team with 2 selections in the top 10. 5th overall Howell Reese, linebacker/edge from Ohio State. 10th overall Francis Mauigoa, offensive tackle/interior O-line Miami. 2nd round 37th overall Colton Hood, cornerback Tennessee. 3rd round pick 74 Malcolm Fields, wide receiver Notre Dame. And then 3 selections in the 6th round, pick 186 Bobby Jamison Travis, interior D lineman Auburn. 192 J.C. Davis, offensive tackle Illinois. And 193 Jack Kelly, linebacker BYU. Reese turned into this hybrid on-off-ball linebacker in 2025 for the Buckeye defense. His combination of arm length and pop in his hands allows Reese to fend off blockers and keep his frame clean in the run game, just tossing aside tight ends trying to occupy him. His short area agility and overall movement skills and coverage are impressive, and he has some nice moments finding and falling underneath deep crossing routes if there's nothing in front of him to occupy him. While as a pass rusher, his arsenal of moves still needs to be developed more before he can be productive in a full-time edge role early in his career. His explosiveness and the quicks to pull off crossface moves, plus the closing burst to attack from various angles, or erase scrambling quarterbacks as a spy, truly jumps off the screen. If he does get asked to drop into coverage a lot, I'd say his feel for shrinking passing windows and muddy breeds for quarterbacks is still developing. This team released veteran linebacker Bobby Okereke earlier this offseason. New Giants head coach Sean Harbaugh said that he'll line up next to Tremaine Edmonds, and he'll be in the A gap, the B gap, the C gap, the D gap off the edge. He'll be moving around with all our guys. His defensive coordinator Denard Wilson is from the Mike McDonald tree, where they teach players the entire defensive play call, and everyone is supposed to be able to line up in any spot along the front theoretically to offer more complexity. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how exactly he's going to be deployed. But I believe he's the type of guy who can handle such a hybrid role and make an impact worthy of a top 5 pick right away, with the upside to become even better. Francis Mauigoa from Miami. Obviously this was the extra first round that they got in return for all-pro nose tackle Dexter Lawrence from Cincinnati, and I would have loved seeing them team Reese back up with the aforementioned Caleb Downs in the secondary, but I can certainly get on board with continuing to bolster the O-line. Hurricanes head coach Mario Cristobal once said this about Mauigoa as a freshman offensive tackle: greatest muscle density in Miami history. You see that show up with how he can develop defensive linemen to go with the play strength to take control of them in the run game, features an explosive initial kick into his pass sets, while operating with a lot more conviction and balance in his movements as a junior. And when his cleats are firmly in the turf, Mauigoa packs plenty of stopping power against the bull rush. Now, he regularly dips his head and doesn't accelerate his feet into contact as a run blocker to the extent you'd like to see. Plus, his elbows end up wide and high a lot as a pass protector, which costs him power in his punch and makes the edges to his frame more accessible. But another Bruce Feldman's freaks list guy who should plug in at right guard for a couple of years and immediately strengthen that unit before sliding one spot over when Jermaine Illumina's dead cap hit for the final season of his 3-year deal becomes negligible. I like the fact that they secured that spot early to make up a quality tandem on the edges, with hopefully a healthy Andrew Thomas again, upgrade from Daniel Falele, who was otherwise slated to start probably, and you have that option to kick the rookie back out in case of injury. Hood from Tennessee I really thought would go 9-1, with the medical concerns around the other former Vol corner in Jamal McCoy, and the state of the position beyond a clear number 1 guy Matsur Lane. Hood plays on the fringes of what's legal while avoiding penalties, disrupting receivers early in the route and continuing to impede their progress. Looks very comfortable turning his head and looking back for the ball down the field in symbiosis with his man, thanks to 4.44 speed and a 40.5-inch vertical to win aerial battles. And although he's not dying to get involved in collisions around the line of scrimmage from his corner spot, and he missed a crazy amount of tackles previously at Colorado by diving head first, he frequently disengages from blockers at the exact right moment to make tackles on the perimeter and has shown significant improvements. I will say that his instincts are still being honed in as a zone defender, and his transitions lack some twitch. But for a team that signed Paulson Adebo as a big ticket free agent this past offseason and brought in Greg Newsome for a year at $8 million in this cycle, Deonte Banks has definitely fallen out of favor, even with the new coaching staff coming in. I think the best three may also not include Drew Phillips either, but putting Newsome in the slot and Hood is the boundary corner on the backside, who's so prevalent in style of defense that Nat Wilson was part of in Baltimore, and maybe Drew can mix in some as a backup safety and when they go to dime personnel groupings. Malachi Fields from Notre Dame, who they jumped up basically a full round here in exchange for an early 5th rounder and a 4th next year going to Cleveland, who has the prototype X receiver size at 6'4", 220 pounds, but impressive initial quickness to create early separation, can drop his weight and cleanly get out of his transitions or find space within some coverages, and he excels at tracking the ball down the field, going up in the air and mossing defenders in contested situations before they have to try dragging him down. Even if it seems like he's about to get on top of corners with the outside release, he doesn't have that burst in the 5-yard window or long speed to put guys in catch-up mode, running a 4.61 at the combine, and a lot of his best moments came in contested situations rather than actually separating on sharp breaks on the intermediate level. But a perfect complement to Malik Neighbors is the staff that receiving corps, who they can free up and allow to move around the formation when you put Fields on the line. Maybe you do make him a power slot in certain situations. New York spent $4.5 million combined this offseason on down, but need to be protected off the ball to allow him to get going. So really, no matter how you turn it, Fields is the guy you kind of need out there in order to get the best out of the pieces around him. Bobby Jamison Travis from Auburn is the one guy I didn't get to in terms of my individual film studies. Watch a lot of the Auburn D-line between Caldrick Ford and Kieran Crawford, a former JUCO recruit and 60 senior, who was clogging up lanes inside for them at 6'3", 335 pounds, with an 83-inch wingspan, at least to give you some early down work maybe in place of big decks at the nose. But after Lucky Fotu was the likely starter previously, they signed veteran DJ Reader for a couple of years at $12.5 million 2 weeks ago, and they also claimed former Chicago third-rounder Zach Pickens of waivers. So a tough road for him to make that roster. But then I really like the back-to-back picks later in round 6. J.C. Davis from Illinois was a 4-year starter left tackle with arms over 34 inches and hands over 10 inches, fluid out of his stance and into his run fits with that finishing mindset where he wants to put defenders in the ground, jumps out to and takes the fight to wide alignments as a pass protector with jarring punches but also pretty smooth lateral movements to cut off crossface moves, pretty top heavy in the way he leads into run blocks, which combined with subpar hand placement and contact balance limits his effectiveness, while leaning into and hugging rushers a lot, leading to 20 penalties for his first 3 seasons before cleaning things up last year. Really like him as a swing tackle option to develop if they want to keep Marinor fixated on guard early on, or it's Thomas on the left side getting banged up. Thought he could have easily gone a couple of rounds earlier, and Jack Keller, the BYU linebacker, was a 2-year team captain for the Cougars with a borderline elite physical profile. His short area agility to sort through the trash and position himself in rushing lanes stands out. Shows impressive lateral agility, foot quickness and coordination to mirror running backs releasing into the pattern. He was insanely effective as a pass rusher during his career, with his acceleration instincts to counter protectors. At this point, overruns too many plays and leads with his pass rather than punching and releasing from blockers under control, and comes in way too hard as a tackler, especially with longer ventures, with a 21% miss rate over 2 years with BYU. I guess Micah McFadden is still the primary backup at linebacker for them, but could Kelly make him expendable when that guy's rookie deal runs up next year, and see the field some already to make the pressure group feel even more dynamic this year? If he makes a couple of splash plays on special teams, I could see it. So altogether, another team that really put together a strong draft class, which I highlighted as part of my big draft recap. More specifically, I called it the fans of the old school New York football giants, with the size and physicality they added to the trenches. And I'll give them a ton of credit for this. In no mock draft basically did Reese make it to 5. And most people probably were a little confused about where he actually plays for them as a rookie. But they didn't overthink it, they simply took the best player on the board, which I think he also was the top off-ball linebacker available, while Brian Burns and Abdul Carter are screaming off the edges. Maybe they do trade Kayvon Thibodeau as that third guy in the rotation now, because Reese can mix in as a pressure play on passing downs. But either way, that front, even without Lawrence in the middle, if they can get to third and long, with Reese's ability to trigger downhill against the run, and corral quarterbacks and keeps features into, oh baby. You immediately upgrade at right guard, and maybe slide Marino back out to tackle eventually. You enable your best combination of corners and wide receivers, with players that have the skill sets to line up in the boundary. And what might be a swing tackle and number 3 linebacker by 2027, there's just not much for me to critique here. Excellent work by John Harbaugh it seems, since general manager Joe Shane apparently has been largely pushed into the background. As for the Philadelphia Eagles, in round 1, 20th overall, it selected Mekhi Lemon, wide receiver from USC, second round 54th overall, Elias Stowers, tight end Vanderbilt, third round pick 68, Markel Bell, offensive tackle Miami, fifth round pick 178, Cole Payton, quarterback North Dakota State, in the sixth round pick 207, Micah Morris, interior offensive lineman Georgia, and then 3 7th rounders, pick 244, Cole Wisniewski, safety Texas Tech, pick 152, War Bernard, the interior defensive lineman from the International Pathway Program via Nigeria, and then one selection after that, Keyshawn James Newby, the edge out of New Mexico. Lemon they moved up 3 spots for in order to jump the hometown Steelers, who were already on the phone with the receiver, but Philly was able to pull off this in-division scoop for a pair of 4th rounders while getting a 7th back next year. Compactly built and has that instant acceleration off the line, along with lightning quick feet and contact balance to not get bumped off track working through congested areas. Catches everything you put in his vicinity with no fear whatsoever over the middle of the field, and can crank his neck around to track passes way down the field. The way he was highly effective on targets of 20+ air yards last season, becomes a running back after the catch with great balance and at a low center of gravity, forcing a missed tackle on better than every 4th reception over the last 2 years. And he gets after it in the run game, willing to insert against safeties or cut off the alley for them. Reportedly, he had a 40 time around 4.5 at his pro day, even though he clearly didn't train for it specifically when he watched the footage. But you do see a lack of a top gear that allows him to detach from defensive backs. And he was provided a ton of free access, where he didn't have to defeat press defenders or win his route run against man coverage due to how much his own USC faced. So I thought this was right in line with where I valued Lemon. I don't mind at all Philly jumping up here for him, since clearly the Steelers were ready to select him at pick 21. And whether they meant defenses with A.J. Brown or not, this is the type of player that should encourage Jalen Hurts to attack the middle of the field more frequently. This was after already acquiring Dontavian Wicks from Green Bay for a 5th round of this and the 6th round pick next year prior to the draft. So that 3 wide receiver set with Devontae Smith makes a lot of sense, potentially to go with this next selection, while free agent Hollywood Brown can rotate in to provide more of a pure speed element. Elias Stowers called a tight end out of Vanderbilt, but basically is more of an oversized receiver at this point, 6'4", 235 pounds, where he does pretty well to lift up and wash down the ends at times, and glides up off combination blocks with good timing, even though he doesn't truly latch and sustain or to be trusted in the run game near the point of attack. While the technical parts of being a blocker and nuances as a route runner are things he's obviously still learning, and the lack of physicality to provide catch space for himself underneath does show up in times, but he can legitimately put safeties on the heels during the drive phase of his routes, and has the ankle flexibility to roll through speed cuts, snatches the ball at full extension for some impressive grabs with a defender on his backside, and can really play above the rim with that record-setting 45.5-inch vertical, plus he's able to plan and cut around would-be tacklers with enough strength to pull through their reach. This is a weapon who can do more damage on passing downs, while Dallas Goedert is back for one more year as an inline Y to help free up the rookie, who in return takes hits off the veteran. They also brought back Grant Calcaterra and signed Johnny Munt to secure that group. I would really like to see Stowers add that seam running element to that offense. Michael Bell, the tackle for Miami, is a mammoth of a man who weighed in at 346 pounds, and even with the less beneficial combine measurements, his arms came in at 36.5 inches, capable of just mauling smaller defenders with how he covers them up with his wide body, and can right the tackles into the lap of linebackers on double teams. Combining his monstrous frame with that wingspan, getting around Bell presents a monumental challenge for pass rushers, especially if they're adding some fake one-handed punches to lure them in. Definitely more passive than you'd like to see from a guy his dimensions in the run game, and his really small hands would limit his ability to sustain blocks, and his high center of gravity, combined with a tendency to lift his post foot, make him vulnerable to guys taking the inside path on him. But I can already see him replacing Lane Johnson whenever the Philly legend decides to hang up his cleats. Karen Williams is a guy way down the board last year, is another name to pay attention to in terms of the talent he has, and Miles Hinton looked at similarly, so even without their stalwart O-line coach Steph Stoutland, they now have 3 guys with potential to develop into long-term options to replace potentially both tackles down the line. Bell is probably the most tested among those guys for now. And they originally owned the comp pick at the end of day 2, but packaged that with a 3rd rounder next year for veteran edge rusher Jonathan Grenard and pick 244, which also materialized itself into a play I liked a lot, because for as good as the edge class was this year, it had really run dry at that point, and they definitely needed help there after not being able to keep up in the bidding war with Carolina for Jalen Phillips, who was an impact player for them after being acquired at last year's trade deadline. But then in round 5, Cole Payton, the North Dakota State quarterback, the earlier 5th rounder had been shipped off to Green Bay for Wicks, as I already talked about, but Payton I thought would go top 100. This is a big, strong quarterback with NFL-level arm talent and athleticism, can either dispose of options quickly to advance in his progressions, or bleed out longer developing concepts before getting to his checkdown if it doesn't open up. Stands strong in the face of pressure, but when he gets out there, they used him on plenty of design carries as well. His ability to shake off tacklers or hurl over them is highly impressive. Now, he's only a 1-year starter with a elongated release and some inconsistencies in his delivery that invite some variance. At this point, he needs to see receivers come open rather than anticipating throws, and he'll have to speed things up a lot. For as good as this Philly O-line may be again, compared to how he was able to hang back there against FCS competition and at some point just outrun those guys. Philly traded a 7th rounder to Carolina for veteran quarterback Andy Dalton and still have Tanner McKee on the final year of his rookie deal, so maybe this is a signal that he's available via trade, considering the flashes he's shown as a capable starter when called upon, since they now have Andy if Hurts does miss time while they develop Cole. Micah Morris, the guard from Georgia, is built like a fridge with super wide shoulders and massive quads, yet earned an RES of 9.93, has shown a propensity of flipping sides multiple times per game and just walls up linebackers, and his wide base and 33.5-inch arms make him a major obstacle for interior rushers to get past, but rely on controlled movements, slow out of his stance and doesn't provide the initial momentum you want to see on angular blocks, while his feet deaden regularly, plus he stands up and gets lazy as a mover late into dropbacks. So saying he's a great athlete solely based on his straight-on acceleration is simply false, and he has a long ways to go before I'd even think about putting him out there on the field, but outside the top 200, why not? Cole Wisniewski from Texas Tech was my 12th ranked safety, who attacks the line of scrimmage with urgency and finds entry points as a tackle on the run game, although he can get sucked up pretty deeply and take those elongated pursuit angles as the runner bounces outside the opposite way, shows a great feel for positioning himself between routes as a zone defender with an expansive reach and great ball skills, and even though he doesn't have the long speed to extensively cover slot receivers in man, I thought he displayed plus route anticipation and reading skills, along with efficiently transitioning between movements to match up with tight ends, and that may be a specialty as a package player defensively early on at least, along with being a demon on special teams. I found it very odd that the Eagles traded safeties hidden around this offseason on the final year of his rookie deal as a former high 3rd round pick, for basically moving up a few spots on a couple of day 3 picks next year potentially. Wisniewski can be a similar player for you as that 3rd safety. War Bernard, coming from Nigeria, is just an insane athlete. He almost has 36-inch arms and 11-inch hands to go with a chiseled 300-plus pound physique, running in the mid-4.6s at the IPP Pro Day, nearly 11 feet in the broad jump, and pumping out 31 reps on the bench press, but he simply hasn't played a single snap of organized football, so not really much to add here, other than the Eagles of course being the one team to have not only done this, but turned Jordan Mailata into one of the best offensive tackles in football as a former rugby player. Let's see if they can turn this guy into the defensive counterpart eventually, and how do we bring him along on the practice squad. Last but not least, Keyshawn James Newby from New Mexico, capable of setting a firm edge in the run game and works hard for inside position with his hands, had a 1.63 10-yard split at the combine, which shows up when attacking up the field and brings the fluidity in his hips to flatten at the top of his rush with the drop rip, and he effectively converts speed to power coming from those wide alignments, but he's undersized with limited muscle mass for a full-time on-ball role and excessively gets up the field at times, and he needs to diversify his pass rush arsenal, become less predictable of pacing, and having some counters he can reliably access. But as a player with one of the final 10 picks, with the flashes he showed during Shrine Bowl week, after making sure to get Grenard to go with some other small edge defenders, signing lower tier free agents in Alan Bikady and Joe Tryon-Trinka, while also exercising the 50 option on Nolan Smith, I like that a lot, even if we may not see him really at all until 2027, based on the state of the depth chart. So would I have personally maybe preferred them taking the guy the Steelers ended up with in Arizona offensive tackle Maxi Iheanacho, after Philly jumped him for USC wide receiver Mikal Lemon and addressed the position later? Maybe, but the more I looked at some of the names they have on a developmental track, now along with the massive Marquette Bell, I feel pretty good about them figuring things out if Lane Johnson is actually in his final season, and it definitely feels like it's only a question of time until they ship off A.J. Brown. A lot of athletic freaks beyond the first round, with Stowers is probably the only guy who truly makes an impact on the stat sheet this season, but it seems like new Sean Mannion is putting the stamp on his offense, and the RC wants Jalen Hurts to attack in what, for as much as Eagles fans I'm sure don't love it, feels like a prove-it season for him. And even though he's certainly not ready to go out there this year, Cole Pitton at least has the talent to feature into the conversation if he comes along a little bit quicker than expected. Cole Wisniewski is the other guy who I believe could vastly up his draft slot and potentially play over 20% of defensive snaps for Vic Fangio, along with being a fourth-base core special teamer. Not quite as crazy as some of the other classes GM Howie Roseman has put together in the past, but there's plenty to like here yet again. But now let's finish up with the Washington Commanders, a bit of a smaller class. Round 1, pick 7, Sonny Styles, linebacker Ohio State. 3rd round, pick 71, Antonio Williams, wide receiver Clemson. Round 5, pick 147, Joshua Josephs, edge Tennessee. A pair of 6th rounders, 187, Katron Allen, running back Penn State, and 209, Mark Golbin, interior offensive lineman Michigan State. And then the 7th round, pick 223, Ethan Kaliakmanis, the quarterback from Rutgers. Sonny Styles was right there for me behind teammate Alvaro Reese, and some may argue as the top true linebacker, which he transitioned from that previous overhang role of the Buckeyes, became sturdy with stacking and shedding blockers with a condor-like build, where he can attack guys, but also is very skilled with staying clean as he steps around them, shows a good understanding for his linebackers in zone coverage, when he can pass off eligibles and attach to routes once they've dispersed, with incredible range to contest passing lanes, and he regularly charges through vacated rush lanes before offensive lines can communicate and pick him up, while having enough shake to sidestep personal protectors and strength to corner for contact. Doesn't have the feel for finding angles and responding to pass sets quite as natural as Alvaro Reese next to him was, even though he was very effective rushing the pass himself. And with that high center of gravity, he may have some struggles taking on fullbacks, or where he's forced to lasso running backs to the ground rather than stopping them in the hole. But with the massive improvements he showed as a tackle last season, with the only 2 misses coming in that final game when they lost to Miami in the college football playoff, I feel really good about how he can change the feel of the middle of that defense, and that's exactly what Washington needed, considering how vulnerable that group was in the passing game especially, where Bobby Wagner simply couldn't move to the level that it needed at this stage. Now with Leo Chanel and Frankie Louvu as these players who can switch up the front dynamics, that could suddenly be a really interesting trio of linebackers, and we will see them a lot in the de facto base or sub D lineman off under new defensive coordinator Deronte Jones. And skipping the 2nd round, still to the Laramie Tunsil trade with Houston, next was Antonio Williams, the Clemson wide receiver, who clearly understands how to attack the blind spots of defensive backs, switching up tempo along with really stepping hard outside his frame to freeze their feet and create separation in his routes, has soft hands and allows the football to speak to him with how he adjusts, turns after the catch, or lets it carry him up the field, plus then he displays the vision of a running back with the ball in his hands, with the wiggle, foot fakes, and balance to get past would-be tacklers. Generally not the most efficient in his routes, with plenty of choppy steps, and the top-end gear may be closer to average by NFL standards, and he unnecessarily leaves his feet for some passes or allows them to get into his chest. So there are some things to clean up here, but with how many different ways we saw the Tigers put the ball in his hands, and what he can do with it, he should be very involved in this offense right away, where the elevated former journeyman quarterback and previous assistant David Blau in-house, after parting ways with previous offensive coordinator Cliff Kingsbury. I'm sure Washington wants to get back to running the ball more steadily, but outside of Terry McLaurin, who's taken snaps in 2 wide receiver sets from the rookie? De'Ami Brown, Luke McCaffrey, Treylon Burks? I like Jalen Lane as a day 3 pick last year, but he's primarily a stud himself. Then as we skip to the 5th round with Joshua Joseph, the Tennessee edge, someone I expected to go somewhere on day 2, has vines for arms to keep separation from blockers when he uses good technique in run defense, along with quality lateral agility, shows enough burst up the field, and packs a nice chop rip or cross chop to turn a tight arc, and then he has some slipperiness to get off contact late in the rep, when he was hung up with pass protectors, yanking cloth and slithering around guys. However, he has some snaps where he badly gets washed down by pin downs, and all will just blindly scrape over the top of the blocking at times, and he doesn't yet utilize the long arm technique frequently enough, especially considering his build. But still, this is a talent worth going a lot earlier, because I believe he could legitimately be one of the two guys you put out there rushing off either edge or money downs and develop into a player that starts for you, which other than Odafe away, after they splurged for him with $96 million over the next 4 years, to go with Kilovan Jason on a better paid 1-year prove-it deal, once more at $11 million, Dorrance Armstrong was the only other name of note previously, so Josephs could be a legit impact player for them by 2027. And it may even be this year for one of the 6th rounders, Katron Allen from Penn State, who was my number 5 back in this admittedly weaker running back class. Not a flashy player with the dynamic open field moves or long speed to rip off explosives, and his role as a receiver has been highly limited as a check and release option along with running swing routes, but his rushing tracks and the intricate movements to set up various concepts are so purposeful and effective to bleed out what he can get. Tightly hugs his linemen, is a hard-nosed runner who'll plow ahead for tough yards, but also displays excellent ball security fundamentals, and he'll step up with bad intentions where he can completely stun blitzing linebackers. I mean, with Rashad White offering so little beyond what's blocked as a runner, to go with what he does in passing downs, which is really the purpose to bringing him in there. The ups and downs of Bill Krosky-Mary's rookie season, despite the hype from the fantasy community. Am I crazy to think Fat Man might lead this team in carries this year already? I think he'd be an awesome complement as that hammer to the long-striding Jaden Daniels on zone reads and potentially also some lead quarterback draws. Matt Golban, the Michigan State center, features a compact, dense frame with a block for a head and great contact balance in crowded spaces, who has extensive starting experience with over 600 snaps at all 3 interior spots, showcases excellent hand placement, hip extension, and leg drive to great movement in the run game, while consistently winning inside position with his hands as a pass protector and keeping them in place with a tight grip. Having shorter arms and smaller hands certainly creates softer edges to his frame, and he does lose bend in his knees throughout the duration of pass blocking snaps, and I didn't think he owned the short area agility to be a great fit for a wide zone-based system, which I don't expect him to run a lot, even if David Blau was part of that a lot in Detroit previously, considering running backs on that roster. The Commanders somewhat surprisingly released veteran center Tyler Biadasz this offseason, and it looks like Nick Allegretti will be relied upon in that spot, yet unless Andrew Wiley can step in there, Golban may be a primary backup at the pivot, and offers them flexibility beyond this season as a swing on the inside. Lastly, Ethan Kaliakmanis from Rutgers, who just snuck into my top 10 quarterbacks list, has the arm strength to challenge all areas of the field, but really excelled at hitting dig routes between the linebackers and safeties, although his accuracy takes a significant hit when he's forced to move off the spot and find a new platform to release from. Trusts that his receivers will be at the right spot and rips passes with anticipation as they come in behind zone defenders. Unfortunately, his pressure to sack conversion rate from 2024 more than doubled last season, up to nearly 30%, missing opportunities to get through creases and at least get rid of the ball. However, he was sneaky effective pulling the ball on zone reads throughout his career, with long strides and how nifty he is to elude tackles. So although Marcus Mariota has proven to be a capable backup for Jayton, who they brought back for another year at $7 million, this guy may be a much cheaper option beyond that, if he can work on limiting negative plays. So altogether, I really liked what Washington did here. Ohio State's Carlton Tate was already gone at that point, and I don't think they were in position to take more of a risky talent in Arizona State's Jordan Tyson. So I'm sure a lot of people would have liked them to go wide receiver early, but Sonny Styles could change fortunes for that defense in even more impactful ways, even if Antonio Williams may not be on the same level as an outside threat as those guys on the top of the board. I liked every single pick they made on day 3, and they could easily outplay the draft slot by a round or more, with Katron Allen being ready to lead this team in carries as a rookie, just inside the top 200. At least if given opportunities to prove himself, I believe. Considering the unsurprisingly released veteran cornerback Marshall Lattimore this offseason, I did expect him to address that position in some way beyond Amik Robertson, who's being paid $50 million over the next 2 years. And we'll see how he and former second-round pick Mike Sainristil split time between the perimeter slot, the go of Trey Amos, who was put in a lot of tough spots from that same round last year. That's where they could be vulnerable if there are any injuries. Outside of that, I thought the value they got throughout the draft was excellent all the way through, with Antonio Williams as the only player slightly lower than where he would have been on my big board, and a few of them went way later. So as we get to our divisional recap, in many other divisions they'd be atop the list, but they'll have to sell for second here to the Giants, who obviously work in with the highest draft capital, but just kept adding players that can help them short and long term at good value. Certain on how I mapped it out, with Alvarez surprisingly being available at pick 5. They adjusted, got arguably the top tackle/guard combo in CeCe Marinoa, and ultimately I believe added 4 starters with as many top 75 picks, to go with a couple of super talented prospects in the 6th round, and focusing on becoming more physical throughout. Washington we just talked about extensively. Love what they did on day 3 after completely changing the feel of that defense with Sonny Styles as the connective tissue between the front and secondary, with the rangy presence he provides on the second level. If you had told me Joshua Josephs and Katron Allen were the 2nd and 4th round picks respectively, since they didn't own those, I'd be fine with what they did, and they got them in the 5th and 6th respectively. That's pretty crazy. Cowboys are a really strong 3rd for me. Got my top player in the entire draft in Caleb Downs. Even if I didn't think the rise of Malcolm Lawrence with the later 1st rounder personally was justified, you can tell the impact new defensive corner Brian Parker is making already, as they continue to add pieces to all 3 levels of that unit. Plus they get a very talented swing tackle at the top of day 3. If they had targeted a different edge over Lawrence, they would have been contention for the top spot here, but I'm happy to be proven wrong about that. And it feels almost sacrilegious to put Harry Roseman and the Eagles at the bottom of the list, but it's more emblematic of the quality of this collection of draft classes overall. Clearly they had some intel that they needed to jump the hometown steals from Mikael Lemon, and wanted to pair him up with Eli Stowers to change the feel of a passing attack that had gone pretty stale, now attacking the middle of the field more frequently. So many crazy athletic profiles, and that's probably why I can't fully buy into them as of right now, since they're not fully formed players yet, but the ceiling they present therefore is as high as any of these other classes. Which brings us to the end of this video. Thank you so much for watching. As always, if you enjoyed the analysis, please let me know by smashing that like button. Might as well hit the bell too, to stay up to date for when the AFC East version drops in a couple of days, and beyond that. All my content can be found at helloswithfootballtalk.com, with full scouting reports on 130 plus players from this draft, and plenty more. Link to that and my social media outlets is in the description below. Hoping to hear from you guys there or in the comment section if you have any thoughts or questions on the teams discussed today, and I'll talk to you in a few days. So until then, see you later. Peace!